recording.
So Kyle raised the question of argument mapping post ChatGPT. I'll make a general statement, two general statements. First, a lot of people have been making the comment that we are in this very weird, I should find the exact, it was a Twitter post. We were in this very halcyon days period between when all knowledge was searchable and where we're about to be, even more than now, inundated by bullshit. Because GPT is certainly a disinformation enabler. It's going to be extremely easy to flood the public space with automatically generated nonsense. And the key function of information workers will not be generating content or synthesis. For a while, it will be distinguishing bullshit from trusted sources. And in that context, I think knowledge cartography is even more important. Being able to say, well, this is where this fits in the cartography. This is the reasons you should trust this. This is the community sourcing. And I've always said maintenance was primordial. Here is the community sourcing of this information.
What did you just say about primordial?
Provenance.
Is primordial. That's a cool phrase. Provenance is primordial.
Yeah. And maybe we'll even want to start signing assertions and stuff like that, because anybody can say anything and anybody can be, and we'll have to have trusted sources. And I hope people will have the wisdom to ground trust in communities rather than believe everything they see on the net. Of course, I don't believe it for a second. But still, I do think some people will realize just how filled with bullshit the information space is. It will become a thing. Now, of course, there's downsides to that. Community is also the bubble. So difficult time ahead to have, how should I put it, diversely grounded trust metrics. So all the work we're doing on trust and reputation is going to look very different in a high bullshit environment. So that's what I might take from GPT-3.
I came to a similar conclusion last night, so I don't even have a lot to add right now to what you just said. I agree.
It's kind of unavoidable when you're looking at the landscape. Sigh. Really sigh.
I was just offhand comment. I was impressed with the list that ChatGPT generated. Who was that person in our Hangout? Jetsy in general. Oz Fryer. Did you see the screenshots Oz posted in general? Oz asked ChatGPT, how would you design a crowdsourced argument mapping tool? What would be its key features? And, it's sort of like quotidian or like, but at the same time, like it's quotidian, like it's actually, okay, yes, you probably would need these things. Like that's very basic, but, there's a lot of nuance and like the devil's in the details, so to speak. But yeah, okay. Yeah, it does actually, it found somehow was able to synthesize that. I doubt it was trained, exactly on that text.
And I just saw your answer. Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's
I mean, it's kind of saying what people have done in the past. Of course, it's training on data, but I'm just saying that's, I disagree with several of those because I disagree with a lot of the stuff that's been done in the past. So I don't know, if you want to know what people have already tried, then
one thing that's actually, I will say, on the plus side of GPT-3 is a lot of our efforts were about, let's create a synthetic curated view of the landscape. That is now almost a solved problem, as a synthesis of what is believed in the population at large, as a way of, creating a synthetic social view. GPT-3 is highly successful. And you can ask it, okay, what are the 3 most salient points, 4 more salient points, whatever, and you get a cartography.
Mhm.
As a synthetic tool, it's remarkable.
Mhm.
Now, we know it's not the whole problem, but I'm curious, what do you disagree with? That's actually worth going over. How are we different from this view, and from each of us, between us?
Are you specifically asking me because I said I disagreed with it?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone else had, but I mean, I don't
We should take turns.
like a visual editor to allow you to create and organize their arguments. That kind of implies boxes, arrows, and labels. I mean, maybe I would say it a different way. I do want people to be able to enter their arguments, but it may or may not be a visual editor.
Fair enough.
And then, that argument structures and fallacies. It's like, well, fallacies is, that's not explicitly in the system. People can call out fallacies, but I don't want a system that includes a predefined list of fallacies as part of the inherent data structure.
Okay.
I mean, or at least not initially. I mean, at some point in the future, it'd be nice to have, but it also kind of pigeonholes people, and the current fallacy lists are very, even with the recent organizations where people have been grouping and combining things, it's still kind of badly built, named badly because it's just been collected over time. And no one's kind of put a thought to the whole, not no one, but we haven't gone very deep on thinking through the whole thing and really what it means. And
hard disagree on
that fallacies kind of make an argument false when that's not what they do. That's fallacy.
Yes, there I agree fully.
And
okay.
I guess some of this other stuff is just later on, like an analytics engine to track the popularity and effectiveness of different arguments. I mean, that'd be nice to have in a future thing right now, but popularity is not the core of what I'm trying to work on. Popularity is, it's a side piece of data, but not the primary focus. So,
yeah, I was thinking that the visual part may relate to the prompt. So some people have noted that you can very much steer ChatGPT depending on how you word your prompt. And so I think the fact that Oz asked for a mapping tool probably triggered, a lot of things it had seen about people who are mapping things, because map and visual go together. But yeah, your points make sense. One thing I was curious about is the refinement, and I couldn't get it working on my phone last night and didn't go to my laptop to try it, is I wanted to enter that prompt and then ask it how it would basically do ranking, because that's something it kind of leaves out, is how do you, but I was also trying to think about how to phrase that for ChatGPT, like how do you prioritize things? And that's something that's not really addressed in these 7 points or whatever, 6 points.
Okay, should I go through the list?
Sure.
I often made a lot of noise about hating boxes and arrows. I have no problem with them as building tools. I think they're very poor for representing global data. But building tools, whatever ecosystem, whatever floats your boats, cognitive styles, I don't care. If people are happy with Lego, people are happy with Lego. But I'm a text guy, but many people want to see visual structure. I do think it's important to make the dependency graph visible. Whether that's the same as the input data is a different story. Curated maps can have bubbles and arrows because they're curated, they're not global. We can choose how many things we have in a curated map, and we can make it small enough that it's amenable to bubbles and arrows. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I don't care. Fallacies, where I agree fully with what Bentley said. Most argument structures are heuristics. They're not inherently good or bad. Some are always good, but very few outside mathematics. Some are always bad. Again, very few. Most of the time, they are used because they make some intuitive sense and work some of the time. And the work, when you say there's not being careful thought on that, there I disagree, because I think I often wave the argumentation schemes book. I think Walton's done a beautiful work of cataloging, grouping, and exposing, well, this works in these cases, and these are the weaknesses. And I think having a catalog, it's not necessarily of fallacies to say you're wrong, but to say, okay, here's what could go wrong with that argument. I think that's extremely useful. To say, this is the general shape of this argument, these are its strengths, these are its weaknesses, as a way to open up the conversation. And certainly when we notice an argument form that's defeasible, that's the feasible reasoning, right? In the wild, and we want to enter it, it's important to recognize it for what it is. It's defeasible. How is it defeasible? Yada, yada, yada. Restricting ourselves to the non-defeasible reasoning, I think, means there won't be much left. Again, outside mathematics, real world argument is always defeasible. I like mathematics and all, but popularity, I find popularity usually hugely useful, but that's me. For my, it's like knowing this is how people understand this claim. Knowing that if there's multiple interpretations, how fringe or how mainstream is that interpretation. And same thing for fallacies. If there's not only a defeasible, but a defeated reasoning, it may still be common. We want to know that. We want to identify it. Here is this common reason, either reasoning schema or specific application thereof, that you're using. A lot of people believe that, and here's why it's defeated in this specific case. So I want to know that it's common so that I can direct people to it. This looks like this popular fallacy. Are you aware that this is being defeated? So popularity, I think, is extremely important. Integration with social media, alas, probably useful. Library, that's kind of the whole point of the CDL, isn't it? So yeah, obviously, I think that's useful. So no, I'm pretty aligned with this list. I understand I'm the first to say, don't restrict yourself to boxes and arrows, because you can't, it doesn't scale. But the entering wrong reasonings in so that it can be associated with its refutation and presented in priority if it's popular, I think that's important. I could speak a bit about my latest work. I think Bentley's heard some of it, not Carl.
Then I want to get your opinion, your guys' opinion on something, but why don't you go ahead?
Go ahead. Start with that.
Okay. I'm still working on explaining, first of all, Reason Score, Reasonpedia, and then also a little bit of what we're doing. And I was toying with the whole problem with people, like when you start talking about like being rational or evidence-based, and people always think that that kind of excludes intuition or excludes emotion. So I was wondering if the term, and this may not be, it may be more to get people to sit up and listen, but augmented intuition. Because it's like taking intuition and then, you know, bouncing it up against evidence and then improving it, but you never quite fully get away from a source of intuition, right? Okay.
Well, augmenting intuition evokes two things to me. One is augmenting the intuition process itself. Like, for example, can you use up to a point random noise as an intuition pump, which is a totally different process.
Yeah.
And here you're speaking more of the a posteriori. You've had an intuition and now you want to test it against evidence, which is the latter part. Like, what do I do with my intuition?
And test it against other people's intuition. Yeah.
Also, and or evidence. Both are valid. You're absolutely right. So there's many ways to augment intuition. There's no doubt that what you're doing qualifies as one form of augmented intuition. But I think augmented intuition sounds a bit broader than what you're speaking about.
Yeah, that's a good
It's
point.
the only point I'd make otherwise. But otherwise, I like the term.
Cool. Carl,
Because
does it invoke anger in you, or what do you think?
Does it involve what?
Augmented intuition?
Yeah. Oh, what's that feel like when you hear that?
I like it.
Okay.
I mean, augment, I think, is the positive, like it's like a gentle positive word, doesn't feel overbearing.
Yes.
And intuition, I think intuition leaves me curious. I'm like, wait a second, are we supposed to be using reason, not intuition? But like not in a negative way, not like I distrust you, but like more in like I'm curious. Because there's a lot, there's been like thinking fast, thinking slow. There's been a lot of buzz about, how a lot of our reasoning is intuition based. So I think people would be open to framing it in those terms. If I understood correctly what you're trying to go for.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So I'm also asking ChatGPT to implement a crowdsourced fact-checking system. I'm looking over its React component right now. It actually created a component for fact check list, fact check detail.
Oh Lord!
Kind of looking this over.
Well, we're done. That was good.
Well, yeah, I have to prod
After 3 years, we finally CDL exists.
Let me
Lord in heavens!
Check. That'll be the title of this video. CDL's finished. We're done. I'm just kidding. Always interesting.
Yes. Well, certainly what AI is promising us is a faster iteration loop. Nothing wrong with that. But certainly exercising judgment is all the more. And that's the problem, right? I mean, people thinking, oh, it comes from the computer, it's right, and giving up on judgment. I think some people are a bit smarter than that. Not, unfortunately, not everybody.
It would be interesting to know what the average person's default intuition is about when they see GPT. Like, do they think because it's from a computer and from an AI that they give it a certain level of veracity, or are they even more skeptical because they hear artificial intelligence? And that'd be interesting to know what people and what the skew is there. Is it like half the people think it's true or not?
And by education level and social class, and
because my first I just kind of don't dismiss it, but it's, I don't know the best way to say it. It is immediately skeptical, or, I am skeptical of anything. Like, that's the first reaction is, it might have some useful information, but the chance of it all being correct or being correct, the majority is very low.
It is acting as a proxy for the crowd. And the crowd is not always right, not always wrong. So I would treat advice from the crowd from an embodied crowd calculated embodied crowd, the same as I would take advice from anyone. Trust but verify, right? I mean, maybe not trust as much, but there's certainly something there. It doesn't come from nowhere. So there's something worth listening to, but verify, because
I should ask it about the current stuff that I'm battling, that I believe that most people and most like doctors have wrong, the stuff in nutrition science, and see whether it parrots back the accepted kind of current medical advice, or if it has seen all the people arguing about it online and seeing if it
it's
I don't know,
seen
I mean,
both, and I think it will regurgitate one or the other depending on prompt.
Yeah.
One
which would be interesting. Maybe we should start asking it to write a script of two people disagreeing over a certain topic, and then see all the pros and cons that it generates.
Well, that was in the auth primer, right? Everybody's seen the auth primer?
No.
Okay, that's in our field. It's kind of vital to look at that now. It's chat here. This is basically factored cognition primer. So these are experiments with relevant prompts that you can do to transform questions into answers, and you can ask it to generate debates, representing debates, and from debates to prompts. The debate there's a recipe with code, with open source code. It asks GPT-3 to create a debate on a position, and here's the open source code to do it. It's pretty good. There's a lot of how to do amplification, how to do confabulation, that is between claim A and conclusion B. What would be a plausible argument? There's all these recipes for a lot of GPT-3 based operations. It's pretty darn interesting.
Is this a guidebook for
Yeah.
basically how to effectively interact with?
Yeah.
Okay. How recently how old is this? Like, how recently did you see this?
I've been made aware of it. I don't remember when, but I started paying serious attention 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, a month ago. It's older than that. But yeah. It's not very old. It's totally, it depends on OpenAI does that. But these are people who take OpenAI seriously. And see the first commit, let me look. September 15th, my goodness.
September
10th, first commit. It's, if you're interested, where's the chat? So you need an OpenAI key, but otherwise it's all open source. Build how to write a recipe that iteratively, the debate recipe, and then it creates it step by step. And you can be one of the actors if you want.
I wonder if it's less argument tree-ish with atomic debates, atomic arguments. Which I'm sure we could tweak it to do that.
The ChatGPT just gave me its definition of a standalone claim. And I think it caught something maybe we didn't include in ours. It says additionally, the claim value should not include any supporting evidence or arguments. I don't remember if we said that in our
No, we
definition,
didn't.
not to include any arguments or evidence.
No, that was a deliberate exclusion, mind you.
Oh, it was? I
But-
don't remember. Okay, I might have been missing. from it.
But interesting. I disagree, but I very interesting that it saw it.
Well, that was in response to me just asking what should users include in the claim value, because it typed the claim as a string and it's like, okay, well, what should that string be? So I didn't maybe if we dug deeper on like the standaloneness of this claim. Sorry, I don't know if it's distracting for me to be talking about this, but I'll try and stop playing with ChatGPT now. I'm also interested in this primer. Oh, full of fruitful ideas.
Oh yeah, the primer is worth reading. Very useful. What else?
Well, I'm interested in you discussing what you're working on if you're interested in it.
Yeah, Bentley's heard a bit of this, so I'll and it's in previous recordings, so I'll give it the LDR. I'm still very involved in the notion that words are a terrible anchor for ideas, and people, well, except anything else, I guess, but still, we don't know what people mean, and we're guessing, and it's very interesting to see the different interpretations. And it's true for words, but it's true for any symbol. Like if I create an RDF identifier for a concept, it's still subject to multiple interpretations, right? What does foaf friend mean? Well, what kind of, is it Facebook friend or is it, bosom friend? It depends. Foaf friend actually has subcategories, but I'm trying to show that it's still open to interpretation. And
Is
sometimes,
foe like FOE, like friend enemy, or foe as in
oh no, foaf, sorry. Foaf is a friend of a friend. It's a RDF vocabulary for designating designating relationships. Sorry, I'm too familiar with RDF and was assuming that familiarity. Good question. And so when we use a concept in a claim, whether the claim is natural language or formalized, we have a certain definition in mind. And those come in the form of unwritten assumptions. So there's this claim, this claim, this claim that we haven't thought about, but that we think, well, this defines what I mean by friend. And then you could, if you contest me, you say, oh, do you mean this? And then we could mark, okay, this, and I'd say, no, that's not what I meant. And so now we see that this defining claim is a good distinction for that concept. Is that, well, friend, and we can say, well, sometimes friend mean this and sometimes friend mean that. It's distinguished by this distinguishing claim. It could be in the form of a question, but ideally is an affirmation. And, or another way I put it often is if, you're trying to define friends and, well, there's this characteristic, that characteristic. Okay, if that were not true, would that mean that the person is a bizarre kind of friend, or does that mean that you'd have another name for it? And in which case, what's the name for that variant concept? Do you have another name if that is not true? And the idea is, if we put those in the database, we have distinguishing concept, and the distinguishing concept form, as I've said before, lattice, but we can look if enough people believe both sides of a distinction or the abstraction without the distinction, then we know it's a significant distinction in discourse. It's not a fringe thing. And we can say, okay, let's mark the naive specifier as obsolete and replace it with 3 specifier. That is the one which says, I'm using this when this claim is true. I'm using this when this claim is false. And I don't care, but I'm aware that I don't care. That's opposing the naive to the common abstraction. And say that any claim that uses the first identifier should be marked as needing to be revised to use either the abstraction or one of the branches of the distinction. And make that into a social mechanism for sharing definition. And again, when somebody uses a term, we'll say, well, this term is usually matched to those concepts, and here are the important distinctions that divide the most people, that are the most polarizing around this word. Or you've already matched it to a concept, but this new polarization has arisen around this concept. Do you want to update your statement to take a position on this distinction? And make that a kind of annotation practice. And we'd have a kind of database of stumbling blocks in misunderstandings. And I see that as key to going beyond text or even beyond knowledge graphs, and having an idea of what are misunderstandings about. So that's and I'm trying to make this into a kind of algebra of, what happens when you combine distinctions and so on and so forth. It's in a way, it's a power set, but most of the time a distinction is subordinate to another distinction. So you can, it's not the full power set. It's a lattice, and that's why it's a lattice. So, and again, how to make that operational to people and say, okay, here's a new distinction. How does it interact with that other distinction? So how to ask those questions in a cogent way, and what happens when people disagree on that, and yada, yada, yada. So that's what I'm working on these days. I'm working on that with Daniel Norman a great deal. So we're having this discussion about how do we try to capture both the rainbow-like, ineffable quality of concepts, and at the same time try to be as precise as we can when we're using them.
Who's Daniel Norman?
He's somebody I met through OGM and who's shares very much my philosophy of concepts. And he did express, and I did mention him in the OGM group, but he never joined, in the CDL group, but he never joined as such. But he's a programmer. He's based in Santa Clara. He's a Rustician.
I've been playing with GPT. It really toes the line for science facts.
Science facts?
Yeah, like I'm talking about cardiovascular disease, and it's very hard to get it to even say what people are. Like, why do people say carbohydrates cause cardiovascular disease? And it does kind of say them, but at the end it says, however, it's important to note that not all carbohydrates are bad, and it's important to eat a balanced diet, include healthy carbohydrates like fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. It's like, that's kind of unrelated to my question and actually false. But.
Just for the records, I'm just sort of looking for the name again. You're aware of illicit, right?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. The company Ott that did the primer, they also have this other service called Illicit, where they basically train GPT-3 with a lot of scientific articles. And so if you want scientifically sourced evidence, you ask a question and it will give you a bunch of, okay, in this article, you'll have this statement. In this article, you have this statement, and then so on that answer that question.
Yeah, and that'll be useful for doing the evidence stuff. It's just
Yep.
it seems to be resistant to me finding the in this area of finding the edge, the
No, I understand.
the minority opinion.
Yes. Okay, got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's definitely interesting.
And the problem is a lot of the scientific studies, especially in this area, they start out making assumptions about some of these things based on previous studies. So
Yep.
you
No,
kind
I
of
mean,
get, it's hard.
but actually, this is why identifying multiple research articles is so useful, because then hopefully you get the diversity within the articles. But Elicit is again pretty amazing.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
And that's again by Ott. Ott is doing amazing development work right now. So that was the nutshell. Do you want to talk about your latest, Carl?
I'm happy to. It's kind of boring by comparison because it's all just refactoring. I decided that I wanted to have the Howju code base be more workable. So I'm doing a TypeScript migration. So it's, I'm learning a lot about what it looks like to take a, large, medium or largest project that, I had a lot of mental assumptions. I was like, okay, this thing's that, this thing's that. But then when you actually apply types to it, I'm learning that there were shortcuts that I was either taking or I had, was not aware of, that it existed on different parts of the code base that I'm now, seeing, oh, that thing's not, that property's not there all the time. And TypeScript has now warned me about that. So it's been fun. I spent a decent amount of time evaluating TypeScript data validation libraries, and I concluded on using one called Zod, Z-O-D. It has just really nice integration with, well, I should say JavaScript based data validation. It integrates really nicely with TypeScript. So you write your data validation schemas in Zod, and then you basically for free get your TypeScript entity types out of your schema descriptions. And I've sort of landed on a pattern where I have my quote unquote entities, which define like this is what this thing normally has. Like what does a justification basically have conceptually? And then I have some layers above it, like different models. So I have an input model, which is basically what the API receives. And that's not always the same as what the thing is, because sometimes you infer certain things, or certain things can be added that aren't part of the input. Then there's the form input level. So that's another model that, and it's kind of easy with Zod to derive additional later models from the original model or the entity. And I think I'll have a fourth one called the data model, which is how it's actually persisted for querying and whatnot. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been up to. It's been going slow because we had a baby October 27th. So, and I grossly misunderstood the amount of time that a newborn takes and the lack of sleep that I would be dealing with.
I think it's impossible for the human brain to conceive of the total amount of challenge that is.
Yeah. Yep.
My wife and I'll watch a lot of animal documentaries, and these self-sacrifice of animals to reproduce, like risking their lives, risking it. And we're kind of a bit, we should have more awareness of that, because it would make us realize that, we have it easy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Comparatively, I mean, it used to be that death in childbirth was extremely common.
Mm-hmm.
Having kids was risking your life, especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. But yes, it's that does it. The fact that we have it easy, it's compared to what, and yeah, it's still a lot of work. I didn't want to be, but it's amazing we don't realize how much work it's meant to be.
Yeah. But my goal with Audio is to get to adding those appearances that I mentioned in, I don't know, August, whenever that was. Like I would very much like to get to a point where I'm reading something and I can just highlight, okay, this is saying that, this is saying that, this is saying that. And then I end up with a, kind of like a summary, I guess would be that level. It hasn't really been researched or fact checked. So like this is, Carl's summary of the source. And then you can go in and say, okay, well, this is the claim I thought was there. Is it true or not? And start adding justifications for it being true or false. So yeah, getting to a social fact check.
Interesting. The this is, yeah, there's working on some of that on the side. One of the other things I'm working on is when I'm working on sensecraft, which is more the gamification. I had a great insight given to me recently that, I was trying to evaluate the quality of moves, and that's ridiculous. Let the players do it. Let the players say, and I had intuitions in that direction, but let the players say, this is a great argument, this is a great, and then come up with, this is a great argument because, and argue it out and propose types of arguments. And so I'm turning it into much more of a lab of argument building. And somebody else asked me another question is, could we do this in a conversational interface? And that got me thinking about, one thing that bothers me about the approach we've taken is it's very much building a conversation tree. Of course, it should be a graph, but that's not what's really bothering me. It's accretion. We're always adding. And it seems to me that a good tree also needs refactoring. Like when you come up with a new proposal that's close to another one, what you really want to do is say, well, here's the part I like about the proposal. Let me make that a new route. And this was your version, and here's the variant. And actually, what's varying? It's this question, and here's this variant, and here's my variant. And so factoring out what's common, that's really much refactoring. And thinking about argumentative moves as sometimes addition, but sometimes refactorings of an argument tree. That's something that also keeping me quite busy.
What is sensecraft?
It's the project I have with Jack Park. We thought, well, Jack Park thought, I mean, it's his idea originally, that it would be possible to get people to engage in sense making if we presented it as a game. Like his inspiration is very much World of Warcraft and people coming together in guilds and taking up quests to do sense making around something. And there was a lot of hand waving around scoring, and I've been racking my brains, and I've been doing some basic, okay, this is this proposal has no evidence and it's got a counter argument, so obviously it loses points unless the counter argument can itself be countered and so on. But it's not useless what I did. I still think it should be there as indicative, but I'm very uncomfortable basing points on that, where and points as an extrinsic motivator are not the best thing. On the other hand, if evaluating the other people's argument like a bit Balderdash style can be done, I think it actually makes for a more interesting game. Like the best move, not by me is, or not by my team is, then you have to give an answer, and then a move that, and why, and a move that is seen as useful, productive by a lot of people is going to be rewarded by many people agreeing it's useful and productive. And so adding a game dynamic and a collective game dynamic around building an argument tree. is what we're trying to do.
So
I'm-
go ahead.
Well, I was saying, I'm nervous about trying to fully gamify sense making, like, because the game shouldn't be the point. The sense making should be the point, I would think. And so I've been operating more under the assumption that like a Stack Overflow type model, where like the point is to get answers, and sorry, I'm misusing the word, I'm double meaning the word points, but like the purpose is to get to answers, and then the points are sort of like a fun add-on, and they do matter. I mean, as you gain points, you gain privileges, but you can also lose those privileges by misbehaving, so they're not absolute. So the points have sort of like some sort of value, but not an absolute value. And the real ultimate value is just the use of the system.
I agree totally. But I think sensecraft is a bit of a special case in that somebody's asking me for time. I'll just tell him soon.
By the way, is it online at all, or any mock-ups or anything?
Yeah. It's open source. It's everything. So sensecraft.garden is the root URL, and you'll get the GitHub, and you'll get this, and you'll get that, and the demo. And it's very primitive at this point. There's a lot that's missing, but we're working on it.
Cool.
That's I could give a quick demo if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe I should just do that.
I have a quick question, maybe while you're bringing that up. I'm looking at databases. I've been using Firestore by Google because I like the real-time notifications. But I just came into an issue where if two people are collaborating on the same document, you can update a part of a document, but the notification just gives you the whole document back. So it's kind of useless. I don't know if anyone has any database suggestions that support real-time message-based notification built in with it.
Thinking, sorry.
Preferably a document database.
No. Okay, sorry. You want repeat the question. Sorry, I got distracted. You want real-time notification of changes.
Yeah, but kind of more message based. So like if I have a document, a JSON document that I'm updating, I can update just one key in there, one key and value in the document, and then the notification would be of that key and value, not the whole frickin' document again.
I'm not a document database guy, so the answer is no, I don't know. On the other hand, what you're describing sounds like a CRDT design to me.
I'm really implementing CRDT, yeah.
In which case, you should look at the CRDT documentation ecosystem. There's here are the main ones to look at right now. Let me remember, that actually requires some research, because I have all this, of course, somewhere. There was Yagel for a while, if I remember well, but that's now a bit dated, but it's still interesting. Let me look. Too many. I have this big.
I didn't realize Gun is CRDT.
Yeah, Gun is CRDT-ish. Auto-merge is one of the key contenders now. But there's other. It's worth exploring the whole. And and Joseph Gentle came up with something recently. A new.
Of course, the other problem is it'd be nice if it was also HIPAA compliant. It's kind of hard to find.
HIPAA compliant?
Yeah. Or with, security ISO 2700 or, where the company that's hosting it would sign a contract, a security contract. course, I guess if I'm hosting it on my own, on a cloud provider,
Diamond
just-
types is one of the latest and greatest. But I mean, this is all, to be honest, kind of in-memory process.
Yeah.
It's not database based, and the union of CRDT and database is kind of not there yet. And a lot of people in the CRDT space happen to be people who care a lot about distributed applications. And so you'll find, oh, it has to compile to WASM and run in the browser and run serverless. That's people who care about CRDTs care about that too. So that's why the intersection of CRDT and database is possibly an empty set. And which is sad because there's a lot to be done with at the confluence, but I'm just telling you the sociology of this.
Yeah. Okay. I was just wanting to see what kind of came up when if anyone's running that same issue.
Yes, I'm watching the CRDT world a lot for that reason, and I think it's totally where we have to go. One thing that the CRDT people are realizing is not everybody can keep everything in memory. Hence, what we're looking at is sharing subsets. So can we have I'm interested in those events about those entities, so keep me posted about those. And so the distributed world has everything, and I get a CRDT of a subset of events. And it's self-contained because of query properties. And that's definitely where I want to go long-term with hyperknowledge. Though I'm not religious about serverless at all, quite the opposite. But I do see the value of also having serverless. So anyway, that's totally different. So I'll do a quick. I'm realizing one problem I have is, oh, come on. Many of my quests are, okay, this has started. Why can't I? Where are? Oh, and I don't have this anymore. Okay, so this is an example of basic conversation. It's IBIS. Right now we're using the IBIS metaphor with question, position, argument, con. The pro is not represented. And so this isn't supported, so it's worth nothing. That's our current. And then I would probably want to put a reference here. And then I could say, here is a relevant article at, and this is imaginary, right? And right now I'm adding this. Okay, something's wrong. I think, sorry, I think I don't have the right, no, it's, teams, playing interested, play in this quest view. Okay, the idea is I'm part of, here are the teams that are playing, that have registered interest or that are playing. Normally I thought I was part of this. And so, yeah, I'm there in that. So what are the elements? And if I go to play, it seems I've lost my role for some reason. Okay, sorry, there's bugs. Demo effect, I need to solve that. That's really important. But registered quest, The UX, I'm not happy with the UX, by the way. Working more on the back end as usual, and that means I get to be a critic about the UX. No, something's really wrong. I have roles. I'm in the team, so I should just go and
What does the JavaScript console say? I feel like there's going to be some red messages. Conflict, 409 conflict.
yeah, clearly I need to look into that. Okay, so that's on me, and I shouldn't impose that on you. And but
This is what my day looks like.
yeah.
Wait, that was working before.
That was working before. Yeah, no, I found a security hole, and I plugged it, and obviously the plug was a bit too tight.
Too secure. Yeah.
Too secure. Classic. So I will definitely look into that. I think I know what needs to happen, but I can't make a demo now. So let me do it next week. I think let's not pretend that I can make a demo now in this stage, but I know what the rest of my day is going to be.
And we're pretty much at an hour, so unless
yeah,
anyone has
it's a good
any.
time to stop.
Last thing I was just gonna say is I was trying to answer your question, Bentley, and so the way I was going about it was that you're kind of mentioning what do they call it? CDC. What does that stand for? Change data capture is what some databases call that process of receiving, creating a stream of differences from, operations on the database. Looks like Mongo and CouchDB call them like change streams. And it kind of looked like CouchDB maybe has this thing, change notifications, but I couldn't tell if I understood you correctly, you wanted not to receive the whole document when there's a change, but just the parts of the document that have been diffed, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to just get someone sends in a partial, not even a diff. They send in a partial update. I want to see the partial update.
Yeah. And I'm not sure
it's
CouchDB's notifications and supports that now. I'd have to look closer, but I also agree with Marc-Antoine's point, which is that if you could re-architect to just CRDT, that would be, or what they also call that CRQS. I mean, there's this thing where the things you send are the commands, and the commands then get distributed to what is that phrase that anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was just hoping that there was a
CQRS, command query responsibility segregation. Where
it's that's different, yeah.
Yeah, different, probably related, because that would be helpful to use the two together in a distributed environment. CQRS.
Yeah, I mean, I could go outside the database system and just use that. Yeah, and actually, that's really what it is, because go message based, and then have one of the messages update the database. That if I need to get the current state, I can query the database. But outside of that, you're using the messaging system rather than the database. But that requires 2 pieces of tech. I was just hoping that someone had put it together, but
just for the record, the other thing I'm doing is, if you're interested, as I said, I'm not a document database guy, because Postgres does everything nowadays. You can have a JSON-B in Postgres if you need document-ish stuff, and you can have all the great relational stuff and custom-made indices, and you can even have custom-made indices that go through the JSON-B for specific queries. So, and if you're in the Postgres land, then in sensecraft, to be absolutely honest, I'm doing my notifications by hand because it's easy, but there are a lot of Postgres extensions that allow you to get to transform Postgres transactions into messages. 2 I looked at a lot. One is, of course, there's a PG GraphQL. So you can do a GraphQL subscription on Postgres operations, and that's definitely something I would recommend. Another weird thing I almost used and finally decided against it for complex reasons, but I want to get into the complex reasons. There's something called debesium. And debesium uses actually the database replication mechanism. to transform transaction into events with a Z, otherwise, right? And so you can, and I think it even will send them to Kafka events or something like that, but I'm not sure about that. But so it transforms all operations in database into events, and that's very cool. The reason I ended up not using it is that it's very cool if for public data, but if you start having, oh, this is only visible to these people, then you have to have a kind of intermediate layer that consumes the events, decides whether this can be transmitted to that person, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was easier for me to do on the side than atop debesium. And I'm just pointing out that, by the way, this is the problem with event architectures. You have to include permission considerations. So there you have it.
Yeah. So yeah, like Firestore has that permission by location kind of built in. So
But
I'm
it's
just
not always by location.
well, I would in this case that's no
If
by
it-
location within the data tree. Like
Correct.
this is the user's directory. I'm designating this saying
Yeah,
for
that's
you to
the easy
access the data.
case. That's the easy case. Sure, it happens. It's
But
not
that's the only case I need, so I'm fine with
cool. Fantastic.
But
Fantastic.
the point is that that's all kind of built in, so I don't have to build an API or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just set permissions on it and then I go.
No, I understand. I understand.
They're just absorbing, I'm sending a message to the database and then they're absorbing it and regurgitating the whole thing out. It's like, just give me the data that I put in. Why are you doing all this monkeying around with it? It's really kind of irritating that they have it, they just won't give it to me.
I'm building a team-based game. That means I have to worry when I'm adding a draft node, it has to be visible to my team and not to others, and yada, yada, yada. And on that note, I'll have to leave soon. I'm getting a lot of pings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shut it down.
the baby's doing great chatting. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
See y'all next week.